Hi, I'm Steve G. Jones, clinical hypnotherapist, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Florida, a master's degree in education from Armstrong Atlantic State University, and a doctorate in education from Georgia Southern University. I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist, a member of both the American Board of Hypnotherapy and the National Guild of Hypnotists, and I'm president of the American Alliance of Hypnotists. I'm the director of the Steve G. Jones School of Clinical Hypnotherapy. I also serve on the board of directors of the American Lung Association in Los Angeles. I have over 2 decades of experience in hypnotherapy, and I still maintain a busy practice and teaching schedule because I see clients and teach classes worldwide. My client base consists mainly of people who want to lose weight, stop smoking, or gain confidence. Other clients include sales teams interested in boosting motivation and increasing income. Also, singles looking for love, insomniacs desiring proper sleep, and actors desiring more confidence for their next audition. When I travel to see clients and teach hypnotherapy certification classes around the world, I visit such places as Tokyo, Japan, Barcelona, Spain, Paris, France, London, England, Montreal, Canada, Los Angeles, California, and New York, just to name a few. By the way, since you have an interest in hypnosis, perhaps you would be interested in becoming a certified clinical hypnotherapist. It's very easy to do. All you have to do is go to my website, betterlivingwithhypnosis.com, and click on Hypnosis Classes at the top. You can either train in person or online. After your training, you'll be added to our worldwide directory of certified clinical hypnotherapists, and you'll receive a certificate. I was fortunate for many years to have my office in Beverly Hills, California, where I worked with such wonderful people as Tom Mankiewicz, the writer of Superman, Geraldine Saunders, the writer of The Love Boat, and many other celebrities. I have been interviewed on CNN, Fox News, and appeared on True TV, in addition to having my own hypnosis TV show. With my over 20 years of experience, I'm happy to share with you techniques that I've both developed and learned, which can help you improve your life. I encourage you to visit my website, betterlivingwithhypnosis.com. There you will find my life's work, 22 books on hypnotherapy, over 3,000 hypnosis recordings available as downloadable MP3s or CDs, and these recordings will program your mind to achieve goals in such areas as weight loss, motivation, and stopping smoking. I also have audiobooks, such as this one, where I'm talking with you and sharing with you in a very dynamic way techniques that you can use to improve your life and the way you do things. The reason I'm telling you all of this is not to impress you, but to impress upon you that I, your teacher, am very capable and I know what I'm talking about. I'm also very happy for the opportunity to share this information with you, so rest assured that you're in good hands, and let's have some fun as we now expand your knowledge. I wish you well in all of your endeavors, and please be sure to visit my website, betterlivingwithhypnosis.com. Handwriting analysis is a fascinating world. And when you think about it, it just makes sense, because what your hand does is controlled by your brain. So it's affected by your emotions, it's affected by who you are, it's affected by so many factors which then reveal themselves through your handwriting. Let's face it, you're the one moving your hand, and your handwriting is unique. It's different from everyone else's, sort of like a snowflake. Because of this uniqueness, it can be deciphered, it can be read, and we can determine things about you based on your handwriting. And you can look at other people's handwriting and find out things about them, find out who they are, who they really are, not who they say they are or who they perhaps pretend they are, but who they really are and what's really going on with them. When you want to know information about a person's personality, how honest they are, how happy they are, how introverted, how extroverted, just look at their handwriting. So let's jump right in and talk about how to read people based on reading their handwriting. When you're reading what they write, you're actually reading them. I'm going to give you a lot of practical information in this program, so get ready to learn quite a bit about handwriting. You may want to listen to this program a few times or use it as a reference because there's that much information in here. If you look at a person's handwriting and it seems to be up and down, I'm not talking about the tops of the letters changing. For example, an L would be higher than an R. I'm not talking about standard examples such as that. I'm talking about the letters seem to be on a roller coaster ride. They seem to be going up and down and flowing rather than going straight across, as we were all taught to write. What does this tell you about a person's handwriting? Well, a person's handwriting that's going up and down like a roller coaster, that's giving you a message. That handwriting is giving you a message. And the message is that that person is moody. They literally have ups and downs in their personality, whereas the person who writes straight across is more of an even keel person, more of a steady person, a consistent person. What about someone who writes with big letters as opposed to small letters? Well, first of all, you're going to have to get some experience reading handwriting to know what a big letter is versus a small letter, because if you just look at two examples, you may not really have a good idea of scale. But once you look at enough handwriting, you are going to be able to easily determine who's writing with big letters and who's writing with small letters. Well, here's another easy one, because big letters are written by people with big personalities, people who are extroverted, people who want to be noticed, people who want to stand out. So they want their letters to stand out. They want their words to stand out. They want to be seen. People who write with small letters and small words, their print or their cursive writing is very small. Those are introverted people, people who really don't want to be noticed. They have to write things because they have to convey what they're saying in writing sometimes, but they don't really want to stand out among a crowd. One of the best ways to find out about somebody and really get a good understanding of who they are through their handwriting is to just hand them a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and ask them to sign their name. It's something they're used to writing, and you're going to find so much out about them because the blank piece of paper gives them the liberty of writing anywhere they want to write. They can write on the top, bottom, either side, the center. They can write really light. They can write dark. They can use big letters. They can use little letters. It's their canvas on which they can paint themselves. So if you give someone a blank piece of paper and they sign, what happens if they sign right in the middle? What does that tell us? What does that immediately tell you if they sign in the center? Use your intuition on this. Well, your intuition may have told you that means, just like writing big letters, they like to be noticed. And if they sign off to the side somewhere, well, then they kind of like to hide off to the sidelines, kind of off center stage. Think of the paper as representing the world, and think of their signature as representing them, how they like to appear in the world. What about someone who writes with lots of curves in their writing versus someone who writes with a lot of jagged lines? A print W would be a good example of this. Up and down, zigzag writing, sharp points. Well, the sharp points indicate aggressiveness, whereas the curved writing indicates more of a passive approach. This is a more peaceful person. Now obviously, being too peaceful can be a challenge, and being too aggressive can be a challenge, so a good balance is always preferable. And that brings up an important point. If you are looking at someone's handwriting and analyzing them because they've asked you to analyze them because they know you analyze handwriting, it's important not to be mean about anything. This means avoiding judgment. Saying someone's overly aggressive and just throwing it out there like that is not really going to earn you any points with them. In fact, if they are overly aggressive, they're going to take offense to it. You may want to say something along the lines of, "You have a very dominant personality. You have a lot of energy that you like to express. You're a go-getter." You see how there's always a positive way to say something, even when it might be something negative. People do not, by and large, want to hear negative things about themselves. They want to hear how wonderful they are. But they also want to know if there's anything that they can work on. So when you read someone's handwriting, tell them the negative and the positive, but put it all in a positive light. If there's something negative you need to share, present it as a growth opportunity. Although they have a lot of energy that could be negatively expressed, they have the opportunity to grow and to learn how to use that energy and properly channel it. That's an example of what you can say if you see somebody's zigzag writing, an overly aggressive person. If someone writes letters and they slope upward toward the left, meaning they have an angle to them that starts in the lower right and slopes to the upper left. All of their letters seem to be leaning to the left. This indicates a person who is reserved about expressing themselves. Whereas, on the contrary, their letters slope to the right, meaning they move from the lower left to the upper right. This means that they're more open about expressing themselves. So, as you can imagine, a person who writes with right slanted letters and writes really big letters would be extremely open. Let's say, for example, you still have your piece of paper that you've given someone, and they start to write words in a downward sloping manner, meaning they go from higher on the left side to lower on the right side. They're sloping downward. This is an indication of sadness. This person is dealing with something that makes them sad, or perhaps they're just sad in general. Whereas the opposite, if they start on the lower left and write upward toward the upper right, this is an indication of happiness. Also, if their letters are very close together, this is a person who is, for lack of a better term, we could say uptight. Whereas if their letters seem to be more relaxed, and think of it like an accordion. You can squeeze an accordion or you can pull it open. Accordion goes in, squeezing together, and out. And as you watch the accordion, you can see that the part which squeezes in, squeezes out, changes shape. It's the same with letters. Someone who's very uptight will write words that look like the accordion squeezed in. Or someone who's more relaxed, more open, will look like the accordion when it's open. Again, experience will teach you the difference. Let's talk about the curves at the end of words. You know how some people write words and at the end they curve a line back toward the word in the shape of a backward C? I want you to understand how to interpret this. This means that the person is hiding something, because you have to imagine these words, as they move forward, are being put out there into the world. So as the person's writing from left to right, that's the direction the words are moving. And so you need to imagine the person hearing the words or receiving the words standing to the right of each word. Okay, so imagine on the paper is someone there to the right of each word. The action is directed from left to right. The person on the right is receiving the words. However, if the words curve at the end to form a backward C, that's a defensive move. That curve hides the word from that person's view. Does that make sense? Again, you look at the words on the page. Let's look at one word. Let's imagine the word make, M-A-K-E. And imagine that the E at the end, the line that goes off of the E, curves backwards in the shape of a backward C. So that if someone were standing there next to the word make and looking at the word make from the right, looking toward the left at the word, all they would see is this E that's looped up and blocking the rest of the word. That's because they're hiding something. They want to write the word, but they want to hide something as well. This is called a cover stroke because it's designed to cover something up. What about a person who's concerned with, how shall we say this, saving money, being cheap, we could say, conserving resources? There are so many ways to say it. And of course, you don't want to say being cheap. But a person who thinks along these lines will want to conserve as many things in their environment as possible. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we're talking about someone who just likes to recycle. Certainly no relation to cheapness there, but rather a respect for the environment and a desire to not be wasteful. So this can go one of two ways, either the cheapness way or simply the respect for the environment. The way you determine this is how they write. Are they conserving the space that they're writing within? Meaning, are they starting at the top and writing, or are they starting in the middle? Are they using the entire paper? If they seem to be conserving part of the paper, in other words, just confining their words to one area, this can mean one of two things. It could mean an introvert, but it could also mean someone who is interested in conserving space, either out of cheapness or a respect for resources. So if they're not using up much of the paper, if they're confining what they write, there are now two possibilities that you can get from this. One is that they are introverted. They don't feel worthy of being center stage, or they don't want to be center stage. The other possibility is that they just like to conserve. You can also tell a lot about how organized a person is, if they're a neat and clean person or somewhat disorderly. If you remember the old sitcom, The Odd Couple, one of the characters was extremely neat and orderly, and the other one was extremely sloppy, and they lived together. Two grown men living together in an apartment as friends. One was very neat and one was very disorderly. Well, this dichotomy is not always so cut and dry, but you can get a pretty good idea of how orderly or disorderly someone is by looking at their handwriting. Are all the words in a neat little box? If you hand someone a white sheet of paper and it's blank, this is such a wonderful test because there are no margins other than the ones that they either create or imagine. So do they seem to impose margins on it, meaning do they keep their words in a box? And you're going to have to get them, obviously, to write more than just their signature for this. You're going to have to get them to write out a little paragraph. Do they keep it organized in a nice, neat little box, or does it seem to have jagged edges? Do they seem to have very little respect for any kinds of margins? You can easily tell if someone's organized or disorganized. So I think you're probably starting to get the hang of this at this point. So many things that you will determine about handwriting are just common sense. You can look at the handwriting, and if you really think about it enough, you will realize what's going on. You will realize something about them. The purpose of this program is to teach you all of that common sense in one place and to make sure that you have it so that you, with a quick glance, can learn a tremendous amount about people. Because you won't have to meditate on it and stare at it for hours. You will have a system by which you can interpret this person's personality. Let's talk about communication style and people who communicate clearly with others and people who tend to not really convey their point. This, again, is easy to see in handwriting. Who writes clearly? Have them write a paragraph. Can you read what's in the paragraph? If it's in your native language, you should be able to read it, if that's the language in which they wrote. If you cannot read it easily, this person is not able to convey ideas clearly. If you can read it clearly and understand it easily, then they are able to convey their ideas easily. And this is not even related to what they're writing. A person with somewhat illegible handwriting, when you compare them to the person with highly legible handwriting, we're not interested, as handwriting analysts, in what they are writing. We are interested in how they are creating the words. Are the words easily readable? If they are, this person is better at conveying their ideas than the person with the less legible handwriting, regardless of what they're actually saying in their writing. Here's a wonderful example, and I say wonderful in quotation marks. What about a woman who's married who doesn't want to be married? Look at how she signs her last name. You know, some names can be signed in such a way that they can look like they're crossed out. For example, the last name Thomas, Thomas. Wherever a T is involved, it's very easy to use this technique. A person who actually doesn't want to be married, who doesn't want to have the last name that they've taken from their husband, can use a T and sometimes other letters to cross out the name by making the T a little bit too long. The T in Thomas can be crossed in such a way that it crosses out the entire word, strikes right through it, meaning that although she is Mrs. Thomas, she would rather not be. She would rather eliminate the word Thomas altogether. Likewise, we can tell how people feel about other people by having them write the other person's name in a sentence. For example, if a man writes the sentence, "I really like Mary," and if the word Mary is kind of scrunched up and kind of small in relation to the other words, this means that the man doesn't really place a tremendous amount of value on Mary. This means that he doesn't really respect Mary that much. This means that Mary's not really that important. If Mary were important, he would write the word Mary clearly, at least as big as the other words, and he wouldn't scrunch up the name. So with this technique, you're looking for a comparison of the name versus all the other words in the sentence or paragraph. Is the name written smaller? Is it scrunched together? Is it not as legible? These clues, if it is, that means that Mary is not that important in this person's life. And although they're writing that they like Mary, they really don't. So once again, I emphasize, let go of looking at what they're writing, especially when you have someone write a paragraph. Let go of the idea of looking at what they're writing. But in handwriting analysis, you look at how they are writing it. Words that people use can be deceiving. Someone can write one thing but mean another, just like they can say one thing but mean another. So handwriting analysis, as you're probably figuring out, is very similar to body language because a person can say, I like you, with their arms folded. That means they're holding something back. And they can say, I like Mary, but Mary's name is obviously not that important, so Mary is not that important. The way people's bodies move and the way they write tell more about them than the words they choose. And when you think about it, handwriting analysis is an analysis of body movement because the hand is moving based on the signals coming from the brain. And the signals coming from the brain are based on how that person really thinks and feels. All right, let's take a little break now. We're about halfway through the material that I've presented, and I want to make sure that you're with me, that you're paying attention and that you're learning something. So what I want you to do right now is, if you're driving and you can pull over, go ahead and do that. If you're not driving, then you can definitely do this. You can take out a piece of paper and you can write down 5 things that you've learned so far from what I've said. 5 things that resonated with you. Now, I want you to keep in mind, they don't even have to be 5 things that I said. Maybe you got some good ideas from what I said. Maybe I said something and your brain took it and blew it up a million times and came up with all kinds of wonderful, amazing possibilities based on what I said. If that's the case, then feel free to write that down. I just want you to write down 5 things, whether they came from me or they're just thoughts that came in your head. 5 things that have come to you so far, either from me saying them or from you thinking them, as a result of listening to this program so far. So as I'm silent, I'm going to give you ample time now. I want you to write down 5 things, 5 thoughts that you have as a result of listening to this program so far. Do this now. Okay, do you have your 5 things? If not, go ahead and finish them up. 5 things, write them down. So I'm going to move forward now. Let's take those 5 things that you have written down, and I want you to elaborate on them. For example, if you have an insight number 1, that I should change blank about myself, whatever it may be, I want you to elaborate on that. Whatever you've written down for point number 1, something that's come to you during listening to this program, I want you to elaborate on that now as I'm silent. Good. And now I want you to take point number 2 and elaborate on that. What was the second point that you wrote down, and how can you enhance this idea? I want you to make it real for yourself because I want you to have, after you finish this program, something you can use. So on point number 2, elaborate on it. Consider what you wrote down as point number 2, the foundation. Now build a house on it. Go ahead and write down something now as I'm silent. Good. Now you're getting some momentum. Now for point 3. Point number 3 that you wrote down, something that came to you as you listened to this program. I want you to elaborate on point number 3 as I'm silent. Good. Now take point number 4, the fourth point that you wrote down, something that came to you while you were listening to this program. I want you to elaborate on point number 4 as I'm silent. Great. Last but not least, point number 5. Take point number 5 and elaborate on it as I'm silent. Good. So now you have something that you can take with you after this program. You have those 5 points that you elaborated on, and you can use them after this program's over. So let's continue on with the information now.